A year of budget uncertainty has weighed on the UK economy, but is it that badly bruised? This is Macro Matters, and we're talking about the UK economy. British Finance Minister Rachel Reeves has a difficult autumn ahead. Most economists believe she will deliver a fiscally prudent budget, and tax rises are inevitable. But she has one thing going for her. The economy is showing signs of light, and recent data has hinted at improvements. Pointing out positives in the UK may not be popular, but is it time to escape the doom loop? Liz Martins is Senior UK Economist at HSBC. So Liz, the UK was the fastest growing economy in the G7 in the first half of the year. Can we expect the same for the next 6 months?
Well, you're right. There's a real contrast out there between some of the numbers that are coming out and the mood around the UK economy, which is non-stop doom and gloom. Unfortunately, I want to be really positive about this good news that we've had. We've had better services PMI, slightly better consumer confidence. As you say, the fastest rate of growth in the G7 on the first half. But I'm afraid I am a bit wary still. So first of all, if we look at the second quarter of this year, it did come out above expectations, but it was really driven by government spending. So business investment fell, consumption was still really slow, productivity fell again. And, you know, we've had these moments of perkiness before. We had one at the start of 2025, one at the start of 2024, and unfortunately they've come to nothing. And I think, you know, for the UK, much as I really want to have some positive news here, we are still struggling with high inflation. And as you mentioned at the top, our fiscal worries as well.
Well, let's look closer at that high inflation, and numbers were especially ugly in July, climbing to an 18-month high. What's pushing prices higher?
Well, I mean, we've had this long-term problem with services inflation, and that in turn has come from higher wage growth. That's slowing down gradually, but it's really taking its time to do so. And it's been complicated by things like the national insurance contribution increase for employers, which has been passed on to some degree to customers. So services inflation is one thing, and that's continuing. But then food inflation has picked right back up of late as well. And the problem with that, of course, is that food inflation is something we all feel really immediately. We all notice when things are going up at the supermarkets. And as a consequence, the public become more worried about inflation. Inflation expectations go up, and economists start to worry that it becomes more sticky and persistent because of that.
So much of the focus for pessimists have been the government finances. Where can Rachel Reeves find the estimated £27 billion to close the hole in the public finances?
I think on the spending side, it's really, really difficult. The government wants to improve public services. They've set aside money for the NHS. They're unlikely to cut there. On the welfare side, they've made a couple of attempts to cut spending with the winter fuel allowance and the disability. Those didn't go down very well politically, and they've had to reverse course. And investment spending, well, again, it's part of their growth programme, and they've pledged, you know, to keep that steady. So it's hard to cut there. So that's why everyone has come around to this idea that it is going to have to be tax rises. But that's really hard too, because the government came into the election, or the Labour Party came into the election with a promise not to raise tax on working people or raise the rate of corporation tax. And the bit that is now ring-fenced and protected by those promises is 75% of the tax base. So if we are talking about, you know, numbers in the tens of billions, it's going to be incredibly hard for her to keep those promises and raise that money, and as well build up a bit of headroom, because of course, you know, what the problem we've had in the last couple of years is we've had a very small amount of headroom, and that means every budget, every fiscal event, we're all getting really, you know, uptight and worried and nervous, and the bond market reacts. So it's really difficult, but it does look like taxes are going to have to go up.
Meanwhile, long-term UK borrowing costs have neared the highest level this century. Will bond yields continue to be pressured higher?
So I think, you know, you add all the problems together. We've got, you know, the high inflation, expected higher interest rates. You've got global bond investors kind of demanding a higher risk premium. You've got the Bank of England selling through the QT programme. And then, of course, the UK bond market. Historically, we've had this deep pool of demand from pension funds. That's no longer as reliable as it was. And you put it all together and it's a bit of a perfect storm. Then you add in the fiscal uncertainty, and I think it really is going to be a bumpy ride as we approach the budget. If the budget goes well, then maybe there's some relief after that.
So finally, Liz, where does the Bank of England currently sit in all this? Markets are pricing in just 1/4 point rate cuts over the next 12 months. Does that sound right to you?
Well, it sounds very little, certainly in comparison to our forecast, which has the bank rate continuing to fall by 1/4 point per quarter through to August next year, which would take it all the way down to 3%. At the moment, the market's only pricing a fall to 3.6%. However, despite that discrepancy between our forecast and the market expectations, I have to say I can understand why the market has come to that conclusion. We've talked about that pickup in inflation and inflation expectations. The Bank of England sounding a cautious note. I still think they can get rates down to neutral, which we think is 3% eventually. But at the moment, it feels like there's a bit of a risk that it might take longer than we previously thought.
That was Liz Martins from HSBC. Don't forget, you can watch more videos on Reuters.com.